Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing great. So, in our previous lecture, we discussed what are goals of psychology, and today we are going to explore something really interesting. Have you ever wondered why do we behave differently when we are with our friends? Why do some people remember things easily while others struggle? Why does a child behave differently from an adult? And how does our brain actually control our behavior? Well, psychology has different branches to study all these questions. So, today's topic is branches of psychology. Okay, so let's begin. Let's start with biological psychology. ठीक है? As the name suggests, this branch studies the connection between our biology and behavior. Okay, biology and behavior. It looks at the role of brain, nervous system, hormones, genetics. For example, have you ever noticed that when you are scared, your heart starts beating very fast? Or when you are nervous before an exam, you may start sweating. These reactions are connected to biological processes happening inside your body. ठीक है? Biological psychology helps us understand our brain and body. It influences the way we think, feel, and behave. Now, here's a question for you. Do you think our behavior is influenced more by our brain or by our environment? What do you think? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And remember, there is not always one simple answer. This is actually a very interesting debate in psychology. Okay, now let's talk about cognitive psychology. The word cognitive is related to thinking and mental processes. Thinking and mental processes. Okay, this branch studies things like memory, thinking, learning, attention, perception, problem solving, decision making, language. Okay, let me give you a quick example. Imagine you are studying for an exam. First, you pay attention to the information, then you try to understand it. Your brain stores some of that information in memory, and finally, during the exam, you try to recall it. All these processes are studied by cognitive psychology. Now let's test your cognitive psychology for a second. Can you remember what I said at the beginning of this video? Did you remember? If yes, comment my memory works. And if you forget, don't worry, that's exactly why psychologists study memory. Okay, the next branch is developmental psychology. This branch studies how human beings grow and change throughout their lifespan. Okay, it looks at फिजिकल डेवलपमेंट कॉग्निटिव डेवलपमेंट इमोशनल डेवलपमेंट सोशल डेवलपमेंट ठीक है फ्रॉम इन्फेंसी टू ओल्ड एज developmental psychology studies all these factors. For example, how does a baby learn to communicate? Why do teenagers experience so many emotional and behavioral changes? How does our thinking change as we grow older? These are some of the questions should be studied in developmental psychology. Now I have a question for you. Do you think your personality is the same as it was when you were a child? Probably not. So tell me in the comment, what is one thing about your personality that has changed as you grew older? I would genuinely love to read your answers. So comment. Now let's move to social psychology. Okay, this branch studies how other people and society influence our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Think about this. Have you ever behaved differently when you were alone compared to when you were with your friends? Okay? When you were alone, you behave differently. And when you were with your friends, you behave different. Okay? Or have you ever agreed with your friends even when you secretly had a different opinion? Or have you ever felt pressure to do something just because everyone else was doing it? If your answer is yes, congratulations! You have experienced something that social psychologists are interested in studying. Social psychology explores topics like what is social influence, group behavior, relationships, stereotypes, etc. So here's your question for today. Have you ever changed your opinion because of your friends or because of social pressure? Tell me honestly. You don't have to share your personal story if you don't want to. Just comment yes or no. Let's see what our psychology community thinks. Now we come to one of the most commonly known branches, clinical psychology. So, clinical psychology focuses on understanding and helping people who experiences psychological and emotional difficulties. Clinical psychologists may work with concerns such as anxiety, depression, trauma, stress, emotional difficulties. They may use psychological assessments and evidence based psychological interventions to help people. But here is something important. Many people think that clinical psychology is only about mental disorders. That's not completely true. Clinical psychology is much broader and involves understanding psychological difficulties, assessing them, and helping people improve their psychological well being. And one more important point, clinical psychologists and psychiatrists are not the same profession. Psychiatrists are medical doctors who can prescribe medication, while psychologists generally focus on psychological assessments and psychological interventions depending on their training and the laws of their country. Okay, so don't complicate psychologist with psychiatrist. If you want, I can make a separate video explaining psychologist versus psychiatrist versus or therapist versus counselor. Okay, if you want that video, comment part 2 or something related to that video. And if I see enough comments, I'll definitely make it. The next branch is counseling psychology. Counseling psychology focuses on helping people deal with personal, emotional, social, educational, or career related challenges. ठीक है? For example, someone may seek counseling because they are struggling with their relationship, confused about their career, experiencing stress, going through a difficult phase in life. So, counseling psychology focuses on helping people improve their well being, coping skills, personal growth. Now, let me ask you something. If you had one question about your life that you could ask a psychologist, what would you ask? You can write your question in the comment. Maybe your question could become the topic of our next video. Now, let's talk about educational psychology. This branch focuses on learning and education. It studies questions like why do some students learn faster than others? Why do some students lose motivation? How does memory affect learning? Which teaching methods are most effective? Educational psychologists study learning, motivation, memory, teaching methods, classroom behavior, individual differences. Okay, and since many of you watching this video may be students, here is a question for you. What is your biggest problem while studying? Is it lack of concentration, forgetting what you studied, okay, or lack of motivation? Let's see which problem is most common. Now let's move from the classroom to the workplace. This branch is called Industrial and Organizational Psychology. It applies psychological principles to the workplace. It studies things like employee motivation, job satisfaction, leadership, teamwork, workplace stress, employee selection, etc. For example, why do some employees feel motivated at work while others don't? What makes a good leader? Here are some of the questions studied in this field. Now imagine you are the boss of a company. What would you do to keep your employee happy and motivated? Okay. The next branch is health psychology. This branch studies the relationship between psychological factors and physical health. Our mind and body are connected. For example, long term stress can influence our physical well being. Similarly, dealing with a physical illness can also affect our emotional and psychological well being. Health psychology studies stress, health behaviors, lifestyle, coping with illness, and patient behavior. So, the next time someone tells you it's all in your head, remember that psychological factors can have real effects on our overall health and well being. Okay, and now the branch that many people find the most exciting, forensic psychology. It applies psychological knowledge to the legal and criminal justice system. It may involve areas such as criminal behavior, psychological assessment, legal proceedings, victim support, correctional settings. Okay, but here is a small reality check. Forensic psychology is not exactly like what we see in crime shows and movies. Real forensic psychology involves professional psychological assessment, research, and work within legal and ethical boundaries. I hope you are understanding the branches of psychology. Now, I'm curious which psychology branch would you personally like to study or work in? I personally like child psychology. Actually, I should clarify something here. Child psychology is a specialized area within the broader field of psychology. Rather than one of the major branches I have listed separately in today's lecture, it mainly focuses on understanding children's development, behavior, emotions, and mental processes. So, when I said I like child psychology, I mean that it's an area of psychology that I personally find very interesting. Okay, now tell me which branch you like the most. Comment your answers below. Okay, let's see how much you remember. I'll give you the branch and you tell me what it focuses on. Biological psychology. Think for a second. It mainly focuses on brain and body. So, in this way, you can remember the branches with small notes also, like developmental psychology is related to human development, social psychology is related to social influence and behavior. ठीक है, counseling psychology is related with well-being and life changes. So, in this way, you can remember it easily. And that's it for today's lecture. Today, we learned that psychology is not limited to just one area. It is a very vast field that helps us understand how we think, how we feel, how we learn, how we develop, how we interact with others, how we behave at work, and how psychology connects with the legal system. Now, before you leave, I have one final question for you. Too many questions in this video, but here's the last one. If you could choose only one branch of psychology to study for the rest of your life, which one would you choose and why? Don't just write the name, tell me why. I really want to know what interests you the most. And if you enjoyed learning psychology in this simple and interactive way, don't forget to like this video. If you are new here, subscribe to the channel and become a part of our psychology learning community. And turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next lecture. Also, share this video with a friend who is interested in psychology. Remember, psychology is not just about understanding others, it is also about understanding ourselves. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world of psychology. Bye.